Change your attitude, it changes your behavior pattern. And then you go on into some action.
And we must continue to follow the dictates of our conscience, even if that means breaking unjust law.
What do you call second-class citizenship? Why, that's colonization. Second-class citizenship is nothing but 20th century slavery.
I do not plan to cooperate with evil at any point.
It's time today for us to start doing some standing and some fighting to back that
up. Yeah, I don't know if y'all felt that like I did, man. It was coming in like I'm on my side listening to it, man, and it was really beating in that track. I like that.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I like that. My boy Kazna throwing it down on the beat. You know what I'm saying? I like that.
Yeah, he's doing the music for the intro for anybody who is interested in knowing. If we ever change out the intro, we'll let you know. But for now, we're using that same one, rocking out. But this is the 5th episode of the Martin Times Malcolm podcast, guys. Welcome. What's going on, Shaka? What's going on, AD?
Peace.
Oh, what's good? What's good? Blessing above ground.
Yes, it is. Every day indeed is a blessing to be above ground, man. And I'm really happy to have you guys here with us today. We're going to have some good things to talk about, some fun things to talk about, but we're going to try to keep it good, man. One of the things we're going to go straight into on the word on the street, man, is education at home. A lot of students, a lot of people, kids, some of you guys have kids are getting educated at home right now. And due to the pandemic, it stands to limit our children's education emotionally and socially. I was just wondering about what you guys think about the emotional and social intelligence of the kids out there due to the pandemic, learning from home.
I'll definitely start with that one. Being an art teacher in DC, I see over 200 children in a week, at least 200 children. And, a lot of them have issues like with internet at home, you know what I'm saying? Like not their fault, right? It's like they just might not have internet at home or, have a bad connection. A lot of these kids might get like, what are those things called that you can put in your house and you can get the internet off of it? I forgot what they call it. It's something small.
Router. You talking about modem or like the setup router?
Wi-Fi router, Wi-Fi modem and stuff.
Yeah, they've been giving those out, but those things don't work. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, or it might not
might not
support the family's internet issues. And so you'll have some kids that when it's time for them to talk, they're lagging, and then it's even worse when a teacher's in that situation where the teacher has, lagging issues on their Zoom, and then you can't hear what the teacher's saying. You can't hear what the student's saying. I know I get tired of that shit. I'd be like, look, put in the chat, right? Like just put whatever you're saying in the chat because it's like everybody's listening to it. If we're doing a lesson on art on colors or something like that, and all your
oh man,
like 2 minutes, put it in the chat.
Oh man,
second grade.
That sucks.
Mommy, daddy, write it in the chat. Nobody want to hear that, because it makes everybody feel off. And if you're the teacher and that's happening with you, you automatically got students logging off. Boom, boom, boom. I'm done. A lot of kids, Google Classroom situation where you're sending out assignments almost like it's college. It's like they're getting hit with new assignments every day from all of their classes. So it becomes overwhelming because it's not like I'm in the class and I could be the teacher's pet or the teacher knows me, teacher understands what I'm trying to know. If you didn't turn in your assignment, you got an F. And so that puts a lot of kids who are used to the traditional classroom at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I agree. I myself, I'm a former educator. But, prior to that, I was a private tutor for several years. I started out tutoring through church, and then I, had some students that I individually worked with, mostly middle school, high school. And the one thing that even before this pandemic, I noticed that was just a stark difference. And I was blessed that, all of the schools that I went to were magnet schools. So there was an emphasis on academic excellence. The standards were higher, whereas like most of the schools, I went to public school, but most of the schools in my district, a 90 was an A. All the schools I went to, a 95 was an A. You got a 94, it's a B, a high B.
Mm-hmm.
But there was an emphasis, and they didn't call it that at that time, but what I've come to learn now and how they've kind of rebranded that approach to education is you see it a lot in STEM schools, where it's like focused on science and mathematics, and there's a specific emphasis on mastery.
Right.
And the STEM school here in Columbus, Ohio, I had the opportunity to go to a graduation because one of the students, their graduating class, I believe it was 2017, was a girl that, we grew up with her mom. I was tutoring her in chemistry her senior year. So I got to go to her graduation. One of our Congress representatives, Joyce Beatty, who, is pretty prominent even in the Black caucus. She's one of the prominent Black Democrats in Congress. She spoke at their graduation, and she talked about like how that school was established as a model for getting back to mastery. So one of the things that impressed me was, when as the kids are walking across stage, they all had PowerPoint slides, and not only did it say, where they had declared they were going to school, but I was more impressed by the majors. There was a lot of research majors, like when we were in school, these would be people that were biology majors, or, whereas research professions, right. Physics, psychology, etc. And the emphasis in that school was on mastery. So mastery is the way they understood it. And the way that I learned, I realized like that was how we were taught, is you don't really know a concept until you're able to teach somebody else that concept.
Exactly.
So the pattern that, and you hear a lot of teachers talk about standardized testing and how they've increased it and how that is taken away from the learning experience overall, because teachers are, measured by their job performance as to how well these students can pass these tests. There's a difference between being able to pass a test. Like you can pass a test without actually having mastered the concept.
Well, that's the reason why being in a school environment online, I kind of think that there always is bad and good to something. And, I think that to a certain extent, there are some students that are going to excel in an environment where they're able to study on their own in their own environment, but there's going to be some that would fail. And so that was the reason why I think about it, because, the social aspect of life is a big thing that we miss out on when we think about school, and the emotional aspect of life, is also something that we miss out on going through school. So the fact that our students are not going to have some of that experience for a potential year or potentially 2 years in some cases, that could stand to have a big effect, right?
Yeah, I want to say it's been kind of a flip. Right. So like the students that have issues with traditional school, sitting down, listening to a teacher talking, tend to do better in a virtual learning environment. Like the kids that I was like sending to the principal office every day are getting A's in my class. You know what I'm saying? Because they could, I don't know how. It's like they could
distractions.
Less distractions. More focused energy, because it's like I could press mute, right? I could just watch whatever he's doing and just do whatever he's doing, versus like I gotta sit and listen to everything that he's saying, right? And then also some of the kids are getting a lot of help at home, right? Like I've had to tell some of my parents, like, stop drawing for your kids. Like they can't make a square. They wouldn't be able to make a square in school.
They're like drawing for the kids,
right? Drawing for the kids. But it's not just in art. That's in art.
This is a perfect square, son.
Every single subject, science, ELA, and then getting it wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's like, like if you're gonna help them, at least help them with the right answers. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. Like some of our parents aren't equipped to like even deal with, like, they're so far removed from school, and then trying to help their kids in a virtual environment has even got them stressed too. So it's like everybody's kind of stressed out.
I can only imagine. That would have me stressed out. I mean, and you as a teacher and a parent, have to have a standard for your own students, I'm sure, as far as they're learning at home. What do you have as far as some of the ways that you make sure that they keep your learning going if they're learning from home?
Well, if they're learning from, I like to do more interactive stuff. Like this past quarter, we did more like graphic design type stuff. So we would have like logo design, entrepreneurship. They would have to do assignments around entrepreneurship. So they have to choose some sort of market they want to get into, and then they would have to do a business plan, and then create a logo to go along with it. And so a lot of kids really got into that.
I like that.
Right? Because it was something that was real world for them.
It's applicable. It's something they can actually have to do with as adults.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with middle schoolers, that's really what you want to give them. You want to give them kind of like a taste of what adults do. So like whatever type of like art form we're dealing with, they're getting kind of a mini collegiate version of it, right? That's kind of what you want to do with older kids, because other than that, you're gonna lose them. They ain't gonna care, and you got to keep them accountable. So it's like with Google Classroom, you can put all the assignments out there. They can get them, they can do them, send it back to you. You can see them, give them grades right then and there. But some of the kids have issues with like they're not tech savvy. Some kids are very tech savvy. That's all they do all day. Some kids aren't so tech savvy, and the kids who are like more traditional classroom aren't getting the internet stuff, how to copy and paste.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Little shit like that. Like, how do I copy and paste it?
The one main concern that I have is I do think that there's still something to be. And now, the way that we were taught in school, there was a lot that could have been improved. I like I said, I was blessed to go to, pretty good schools academically, but I think that was more based on the culture that was established and the principles that those schools were founded on. And so it was like, how they say, like a rising tide lift all boats. Like or probably the average student had went to a different school, I may not have done as well. But when you go to a school where everybody is, held to a higher standard,
right?
Then on average, the average C student at one school might be a B student at that school, because it's cool to excel academically.
And that's the reason why I'm saying that concept is definitely missing from the child's education for this year. I know for the people who weren't able to attend school at a place of learning. So we have yet to learn and see what that effect will be, man. But
we haven't even talked about the social aspect, which I think is, the results of that we may not even know for another 10, 20 years. Because if you think about it, that's already happening. Like, I see a clear difference between, the generation of teenagers now. And again, Shaka, you could probably also speak to this as well. But attention span, you want to talk about TikTok or, the influence of social media and how it's affected, kids in school and the social aspect, the social development. A lot of kids are uncomfortable having a conversation with a complete stranger. If you put them in a room, you take away cell phone or tablets or laptop. And I've also seen, I worked for a year in a school environment where, it was basically students with, a variety of special needs, but some of them were on the spectrum, some of it was more behavioral, but their learning was completely virtual. They're in a classroom with other kids, but it's only 5 or 6 kids in the class, and they all have laptops, and they're on those laptops all day.
Wow, I never knew.
It's really doing something to them. Like, it's hurting it. Like, I had a conversation with my kids this past Friday, right? I was like, with my students, I was like, so, because only like 12 of them showed up, man. I'm not used to that. I got a class of like 25 kids, right? And like 12 of them showed up. And I was like, so what's going on? Like, why are you guys at me? You know what I mean? Like, am I boring you guys, or is it like something with the internet, or what's really going on? So a lot of them was like, our eyes hurt. It was like, my eyes hurt.
Screen time, yeah.
Screen time, my back hurts. Sitting down this long is just impossible. Some kids are
that's terrible. That's terrible.
I mean, it's bad for us as adults. I mean, but even though a lot of people are working
Right.
from home now, it's been proven that if you go to a desk job and you sit at your desk for 8 hours a day, that's going to eventually affect your posture.
That's what I'm saying.
Your overall mental health, your physical health, all of those things. So to expect a child to function and, God forbid, excel and maximize their potential in that type of learning environment, in just my opinion, the best teachers that I had were always able to flourish when it was like they were able to take you outside of the classroom and show you some shit that's
not gonna
happen. but you're right. But that is an inherent part of learning, is being able to not just see it on a chalkboard or on a tablet screen, but actually go out and, if you're talking about biology, plant some seeds and talk about photosynthesis and the process of the water cycle. Like, when kids are able to see that in action in real time, it makes it more concrete and tangible, to whereas you were just looking at it on a computer screen, it's just a graphic, and eventually all that shit starts to look the same.
Yeah.
And then there's other kids that I saw that would get through all of their assignments, in less than half of the school day. So what are they doing the other half of the school day? Well, if you finish your work early, you get to go to the gym with Mr. Adam for extra gym time. We got to play pickup basketball for 2 hours. But it was like a reward. So what that taught some kids to do was just speed through everything, get a C, get a passing grade, so that they can go straight to the gym.
Right.
Which is nowhere close to mastery or understanding a concept.
Right. But like nowadays, on the virtual learning tip, like some kids will be sitting there playing their game, like while in class. So like while in class, they'll be sitting there playing their game, right? And their teacher's expectation might be, I need you to have your camera on, but that doesn't mean that I'm listening to what you're saying. And then sometimes they don't even have their cameras on, so they don't know, they just here to be on the attendance roll. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's so many different factors that are happening in the virtual learning space that, I don't know how long we can manage.
I don't either. And I mean, that's the American education system as it is during the pandemic. And, I'm glad that you brothers could chat about it, because I'm happy to know that we graduated. We've already done with school. We're not even doing nothing. But for the kids, I mean, it's tough. And I can only imagine what it would be like some of the most formative years for the students that were, I even think about the fact that there's such a break. Like if you're in middle school or like freshman year, or even in your, fourth and fifth grade, depending on when you start to have transitions of your mind in different ways, to have a break where you miss your student friends and your teachers that you liked and all that stuff, just that environment can really be shattering. And I can only imagine. But yeah, man, we go into the soapbox. This is a topic that's probably going to be controversial to some, but it depends on how they look at it. As Black men who stand to benefit from patriarchal systems at times, should we be prepared to dismantle these systems in fairness, inclusiveness? I know for myself, working in a corporate environment, there have been times where I've felt proud to be the Black man walking around with the suit on, looking clean and everything like that. And I just wanted to reflect on those times when I think about this. Is like the patriarchy that we see in the world that can be oppressive to everyone. Does the Black man play a part in that patriarchal system?
Under the Trump administration, I think that some Black men, even though we may have understood that Trump isn't really for us, that we can use his ideology and his message to further our individual agenda.
Black patriarchy in America has been around before Donald Trump. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King participated in Black male patriarchy. And same thing with Malcolm X participated in Black male patriarchy.
Sure.
So when we think about what Black male patriarchy is, we got to look at all of our institutions, right?
Right.
The Nation of Islam, without a doubt, is all about black male patriarchy, right? A lot of our churches are about black male patriarchy.
Right.
And so when we talk about black male patriarchy, that's something that has been built and created, in my opinion, here in America. Now, in Africa, you have examples of black male patriarchy and black female matriarchy. So it doesn't mean, like in Africa, you can see both systems happening all in the same place, maybe right down the street from each other, right? But in America, this is where like black male patriarchy has been born, because we had the right to vote before women, right? Like black men had the right to vote before white women. And black women.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like that gave us kind of a feeling of, oh, you know, at least our white male counterparts recognize their black male
The totem pole.
Yeah, there's a totem pole, right?
Yeah.
So we got kind of messed up in thinking is that, like, although they put us second on that totem pole as far as getting a vote, we are always last on the totem pole socially. You know what I'm saying? Right there with black women. And so, like, you know, I think that it would behoove us to, like, try to break down some of these institutions.
Are we our own enemies when we play into that?
We could be. You look at Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby created a amazing black family, like, not just show, but just experience throughout the years, right?
Right.
All of that torn to pieces over, like, the stuff that he was doing, believing in that black male patriarchy type of mentality.
I'll give you a more recent example. If you look at Steve Harvey, and how he was able to transition from a stand-up comedian to more of like a commentator, and you know, he published Think Like a Man, which became a successful movie production, and you know, even just that. If you just examine that concept on its face, you know, he's encouraging our sisters to be more like us, you know, to think more like us. That's patriarchy, you know, and you know, we all love and appreciate Lori Harvey. She's nice to look at. But Future, you know, you see where I'm going with this?
I see where you're going with this.
I love Future. That's funny. My homie. You know what I mean? But you know, he's a little toxic. He's a little toxic side.
You know what's so funny?
It's fine
that they both are. I'm not gonna say it, but they're members of a group that kind of espouses like manhood as like one of their principles, right? And a lot of the stuff that
I didn't even make that connection. Wow.
Right?
Wow.
I'm not saying no names, right? When you see like what they do, the way that they act out, like, you know, when they're on the campuses and stuff like that, that's a part of the whole masculine, overly masculine type of mentality. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And a lot of them participate in that.
Right.
Yeah. No, so like it's interesting as we talk about these two guys, you know, and the connections that they had, you know, as far as like the way that they think. You know what I mean?
And there's other examples as well. I mean, I think something that just jogged my memory on that is the movie that's coming out, the trailer, the new Spike film. And I don't think Spike directed it. I know he's involved with the production, but it's the new Nate Parker movie. The trailer just premiered this week, American Skin.
I'm ready.
And I was, you know, I saw a lot of feedback from people we went to school with, talking about his past and saying, I'm never going to support somebody who was, you know, even though he was acquitted, he's a rapist or whatever. You know, I personally, I enjoyed Birth of a Nation, but I can also accept that it was flawed. There was some flaws with the execution, and just like when you go back and you look at the historical accuracy of that movie, there was definitely some things where he could have done it better. And even more so to that point, like, you know, I think that with just the whole cancel culture and where we are in 2020, like where we're willing to, you know, Nate Parker had an incident when he was in college. You know, the tragedy of that whole situation is that, yes, the girl that accused him eventually later ended up committing suicide, and I think that adds another layer to it. Because people get really triggered when his name comes up. And this brother he's not like Cosby, where he was going on speaking engagements talking about how we need to pull our pants up and da-da-da-da-da. Like, he's been, he's a relative new face.
Right.
It was like just that one incident from however many years ago, people are still bringing it up. And, you could talk about cancel culture and what that, he's probably one of the earliest examples of that.
We need to do that with all these white boys that get away with that type of stuff. I'm not saying that like Nate Parker, what's his name? Nate Parker, shouldn't have to deal with that type of criticism, which he should.
Right.
Also be just as critical to folks like Donald Trump, who's like grab him by the pussy. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something. You're the leader of the free world. So I think, yeah.
I mean, the crazy thing about it is that some of these systems are things that have been in place for years. I mean, like, some of it gets instilled from religion. Some of it gets instilled from the social culture. For African Americans who came from slavery times, a lot of people who rubbed their elbows amongst the criminal element of the mobsters, or people who were around the politicians. You're going to see the way that other communities interact with their women and interact with the people in their communities, and you start to mimic some of those characteristics, and some of those characteristics were not the most beneficial for our families to where we are today. So when it comes to some of these patriarchal systems that I'm talking about, it does come to mind that the Papa was a Rolling Stone come to mind, but at the same time, we have kids who grew up without their fathers due to women who had children out of wedlock, or, she was the mistress, or, you were the second, on the side chick, and you had children with this man. So sometimes those things come in, but I think that it's time for us to start as men looking at these systems that are playing in what hurts a lot of other people.
See, if we want to look at it from that angle, though, right? I think that that's not something new, right? Like, that's not something new. Men fathering children by different wives, different women, and stuff like that. That's definitely an African thing.
Right.
We got kind of caught up here in America as far as trying to figure out how to pair like the way the Westerners do things with the way that we did things. I feel like that kind of became an issue. Like,
the difference is being straight up.
Yeah, but that's the difference. It's like in Africa they were straight up like, look, you my wife, you my, and it was actually no, but look, it was a way of keeping the community together, because you didn't have children that didn't have a father. All the children of the community had a father, because the guy that was coming to see mom was dead.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so like that right there, that was a way of Africa trying to fix its like orphan population, or like children that are born out of wedlock. You know what I'm saying? Men will have more than one wife, but you have to take care of that wife. I think
Right.
So if you weren't a man of means, then you weren't even, if you weren't in a position to be able to adequately care for multiple, it wasn't even a thought. So, I'm just gonna say this. Y'all heard of Masego? He's a new artist, R&B artist. He's got a little EP out, but there's one of my favorite songs right now is Polygamy by Masego. I'm not saying I subscribe to that lifestyle, but I'm just saying I understand the point you were making about, us as a people trying to merge our concept of monogamy and like what a monogamous relationship looks like, which also existed historically in our culture as well. But like
more
you
so
said,
than polygamy.
Yeah, if you weren't a man of means in stature, you didn't even have that choice to make.
Shouldn't want it.
Yeah,
Right.
That's 1 and 2 cars.
Right. Like that, it wouldn't even be a thought. You know what I'm saying? It would be sin, actually, because then you're not only can you not take care of yourself, you can't take care of like these women that you done brought on. You know what I'm saying? To help you. You know what I'm saying? And so I think in America we kind of got that type of idea mixed up. Like we still in Africa, we've always believed in like monogamy, meaning like the man and the woman like are that's the union, right?
Right.
Now, if you have somebody outside of that, usually the woman would choose, not even the man. So the
Right.
man don't even choose like, oh, we need another woman in the house. It'd be the woman to say, we need
Right.
another woman in this house.
It's very disrespectful as the man to say that, because for the woman, how she gonna feel when she like, okay, you could say that you want a woman to help with these chores, but we really know why you saying that.
Right. Right, exactly. So it had to come from her, like, oh no, we need more women. I'll take care of the market, da 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 da. Versus the man, like, oh yeah, I want.
But I mean, systems like that even service to kind of put men in a place of prominence, and sometimes women don't benefit from those types of systems in some cases. So are those types of things that we need to be willing to dismantle in the future, like if it's a situation?
I don't think we should because it happens on a flip flop in East Africa. So in East Africa, you have women who will have multiple husbands. You know what I'm saying? They will have multiple men. That was the woman would be considered the heir of the child's.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair.
you know what I'm saying? And
Fair
so
enough.
that type of lineage type of thing. Whereas like the man that she sleeps with or has the child with was just merely like the donor kind of. Like,
Right.
mother is the person that passes down the lineage and stuff. And so that also happens in Jamaica. So you find in Jamaica, there are a lot of women who have more than one man, not necessarily husband, but more than one man. Is more about the woman's ability to take care of her kids, and the man that she brings, will help her do that, versus I'm under this man and he's telling me everything to do. And I'm not talking about like Christian homes. That of course had like difference, but like traditionally in Jamaica, that's how things have been, as well as in
I know
Ethiopia.
that.
Yeah.
I ain't know that. So yeah, man. That makes me think about, it's always gonna bring about culture, man. Every time, guys talk, I mean, it makes me think about culture. But the next thing I wanted to ask as we get into the water cooler is, do you guys think that it's still important for us to use the influence of sports and athleticism to influence life skills on our children? Or should we just pretty much, find other means and methods to instill those life skills? Personally, I think that students need to still learn, or kids, young students, young people still need to learn sports and athleticism, because it does help with a lot of different values. It does help with a lot of things that you can grow into as you get older. So I personally do like that. But what do you guys think?
Well, I think that it's important for our students to have certain skills early on. I think that's for boys and girls. Like I think for boys, it helps build a certain self-esteem. It helps teach them like team building skills, leadership skills, to let go of certain fears and things like that. For girls, it does all of those things. Plus, it gives them something to like work towards. Because like girls during their high school years, like middle school, high school years, it's so important to put them in a sport. And
Right.
is because like they can get into so many different things, and so like to have girls who they can talk to like unconditionally, like, or have like free space to speak about this is what I'm going through, da 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 da. That helps girls out like later on in the future, and it also like them being able to be in a sport takes a lot of their time away, right? So the time that they would spend trying to chase a boy, be it the
Or the time that your son would be chasing a girl.
chasing a girl.
Because let's be real, like that definitely just came down my alley, because that was something that I think was a guiding philosophy from my parents. Was, with my brother and myself, they kept us busy. And as I got older, I later learned it was like, well, they say like idle hands, so.
That's true, though.
You keep them involved in activities, and to be fair, if you are a child that's rebellious, you're still gonna find the trouble through like I played baseball growing up. There was kids that my dad was one of the coaches on the team, so I wasn't sneaking off in the woods during a break and going to smoke weed, but I know I had some teammates that did that shit. You know what I mean? that's fine. You know what I mean? But I think that the most the most beneficial thing for and not specific to gender, boy or girl, is just being a part of especially a team sport. I think is more important. You, you know, there's individual sports, and obviously the benefits, even if you're in an individual sport like tennis or track and field, you know, there's physical benefits when it comes to health and wellness that you will get from participating in those sports. But I think just being a part of a team and a part of a group, and especially like I like what you hit on with you know, Shaka, about, you know, separate, because I think it's more typical for boys to want to be, you know, boys get put in sports even if they're not athletic. Everybody, if you played a sport, there was one kid on your team that had no business being on the team. Like,
Right.
you know, like they're scared, you know, they're very uncoordinated, awkward as hell. And it's like, you know, that's that can, it probably would be a struggle for their self-esteem, but it's still, it's like you get out there and you try.
It propelled them nonetheless, right? Because
they have to face that fear.
They had to face that.
And for girls, I think the biggest hurdle is, again, like, you know, the social. It's a little bit more, you know, as boys, we have to assert ourselves, and that's how you build your confidence, right? Like, if you excelling something. With girls, I think that, you know, and this may be sexist, but I think the bigger benefit is being able to foster relationships with different types of people that you may not otherwise be friends with or have anything in common. And, you know, just that, I mostly formed that opinion. I coached girls softball for 1 year. I grew up playing baseball, grew up playing basketball, like, so all team sports, but it's a little different.
I coached the girls soccer.
Yeah. Speak on it, man. Speak on it.
It's like they build certain assertiveness when they're playing the sport, because it's like, and not only that, thank you for checking my patriarchal mind, AD, because I did say, like, the girl's busy. But no, it's the same thing with the boys too. Like, you know, keeping them like with some sort of like goal in mind. I think whether boys or girls, you know, also teaching them sportsmanship too. Like, it teaches them sportsmanship, how to lose. A lot of our kids these days don't know how to lose.
You know, Donald Trump never played no sports growing up, because look at how he's acting right now. I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? You're supposed to shake hands when you lose. You know what I mean? Good game. You got me this time, you know, but I'm going to come back in the off season. I'm going to lift some weights.
He won again in 2024. He acting like a sore sport right now, right?
Look, he still thinks the game's
at all after the game. You know he didn't.
We will see, right?
Still think the game is happening. Like, that's the crazy part about it. Like, you still think the game is on. Like, this guy's wild.
This guy could be going senile at this point, man. I'm gonna just let it be. As we move into the food for thought, though, man, I think about even more culture. I was reading about something in Japan that they do that helps them with their budgeting and staying consistent with practices that help them stay financially sound. Kakibo is a Japanese method of budgeting or saving money. It's a simple ledger system that is a part of their culture, but it educates their whole, you know, country. Everybody that's a part of their, you know, culture learns this Kakibo method, and it educates them on how to handle finances. Is that something that we should have in our culture?
Well, I think we first of all, yes, I think we need to create more things. Like, I don't think that our culture has stopped, and we're a void from like creating things, you know what I'm saying? But I think also, if we wanted to dig into our culture, there's something in the Nigerian or Yoruba culture known as susu. It's also practiced among like Ghana or Ghanaian folks, and some African Americans here. So susu is the concept of putting in the pot, right, and being able to take out the pot when it's time. So it's like, you give a certain amount each month to a group, you know, not off the internet, right?
Yeah.
It's like asking for $1,000 and they're gonna give you back $2,000, or they show you something on Instagram with a whole bunch of dollars.
Yeah, that's a Nigerian susu scam. I'm just kidding.
Nah. There's not a Nigerian susu.
I was thinking it too.
And
you gotta be very careful. You know what I mean? We've all got that Facebook Messenger, like, you know what I mean? Just $1,200. Me and my wife, we already got five G's. Like, put in your 1,200, and it's a gifting rule.
That's not susu. So like susu is when a group, a community, so folks that you know, family members, it might be like brothers of an organization, family that come together and say, okay, I'm putting in a certain amount every month. And then one of those people will receive that amount of the group like each month. So like whenever it's your turn, so my turn might be February or March, right? And I'll get all of the money that the people put in the pot. Now every month I'm putting in the pot, right? Not even thinking about like, you know, who it's going to. I know it's going to, but I'm putting in the pot. But when it's time for me to get mine, all the money's going to go to me. And it's a way of spreading business as well. Some folks do it with business. So it's like we might not be putting money in the pot, but we're coming to support your business this month, right? So your business is the focus this month, right?
People had running numbers in back in the day, and that became the lottery. But that was a form of doing something similar where you would have one person win, but everybody put their money in the pot, but the winning was based on selection of a winning number. Yeah. And that was something that allowed for our communities to kind of benefit. And that actually was taken from us. That actual financial culture was co-opted by the government and turned into the lottery of a country. So
that's crazy, right? Like my great grandmother used to be a numbers runner. You know what I'm saying? And like back in the day, running numbers was just a thing. That was a part of everyday thing. Whether it's like, you know, dreams. I dreamed the 752. You know, like that's a part of Black culture, specifically hood culture.
Numbers too, like you just said.
What numbers? Like I saw this number. This number I had a dream about, right? I got my homeboy, Mr. Wayne, he played the numbers every single day. If it's your birthday, he playing that number. If it's his mother's birthday, he's playing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they used to be a big part of our culture. And, like, we lost it to the lottery. And it also made, like, millionaires overnight, like, believe it or not. Like, a lot of our Black wealth was built during the 20s, during that, like, time of the numbers. Because it was folks who were becoming thousandaires overnight. You know what I'm saying? Just by their number hit. You know what I mean? So like,
I mean, the thing that just reminded me of that I think the main difference between now, because yes, the lottery co-opted that, but what I see is a bigger hurdle for us as a people in order to, because when you talk about the philosophy, you know, that they're using in Japan, what it sounds like is two things: financial literacy, which jumped out at to me, and how it's ingrained into the culture and how it's passed down from generation to generation, and then also group economics. So desegregation has a lot to do with, you know, because even in cities like, you know, I feel like the numbers game was like something that was more unique to like urban metropolis, you know, like larger cities where you have large populations of folks. Right. You know, like I don't really know that, you know, my parents were both from the South, you know, grew up in the Jim Crow South. I don't know that they were exposed to people that was running numbers because everybody spread out on farms, right?
Right.
But even in those areas, like people shoot dice, or people, you know, they had, you know, whatever, but it was
gambling houses.
Gambling houses or poker, whatever, you know. But the group economics aspect of is what we've lost, you know, and you know, we've all heard that phrase, the white man's ice is colder. You know, you could talk about how that relates to Black businesses doing business with each other or functioning in a community collaboratively. You could talk about how some of us, you know, as soon as we became thousandaires, you know, we wanted to move out the hood and go as soon as we got the opportunity to go be around the white folks just to look like we made it.
You can look at the HBCU numbers. You can look at our numbers dwindling at HBCUs and HBCUs closing.
Yeah.
our best and brightest used to go to our HBCUs, and now they're going off to like Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and good for them. But at the same time, it's like our HBCUs are falling apart because of that.
That's even true in sports.
See, think about this.
If you look at like the older generation of pro athletes, black professional athletes, a lot of the greatest black professional athletes when we were kids, we were growing up, a lot of them went to HBCUs. Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to start in a Super Bowl. He went to Grambling. You know what I mean? I can't name anybody that came out of Grambling that's been a top NFL player. And he was a backup. You know, the guy before him got hurt. But still, he was a backup quarterback on an NFL team that was good. You know, like he earned that spot. You know, and there's countless other examples. I think Jerry Rice and probably a few others went to HBCUs. You know, Steve McNair is probably the last prominent one I can think of. You know, rest in peace. But, you know, that is something that you don't see it. Like, I can't think of any top athlete now in any professional sport that went to an HBCU. And that used to be the rule, not the exception. So
that's true. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think about
the money is increased in these universities. These top programs have increased, you know, their facilities and their marketing, you know, reach. You know, as a young athlete, like you're gonna go where you have the best opportunity to get exposure. So, you know, you don't see HBCUs playing primetime football games on national TV, unless it's the Bayou Classic. And even that is in the middle of the afternoon. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think that's the biggest factor, is just like the desegregation and the decentralization. That's the biggest hurdle for us as a community, because, yeah, financial literacy is one aspect of it, but I think the other aspect of it is group economics, and recycling the dollar that's
the thing that you're losing when you lose the culture behind it, because if you lose the value of it, because you can still do that right now. Like, we have communities right now that have people in them where the only businesses that you're going to see are businesses that someone else owns to sell you a product that you probably don't need. And, you know, we could go back to methods of having that. That's why I say that, you know, we have the opportunity. I like what Shaka said. He said our culture isn't dead yet, because we still have an opportunity to influence what's going to happen tomorrow. And if we want to say that we want to influence a system that allows a young guy to learn how to take care of his finances before he goes to school, before he goes to college, so that he doesn't have to depend on some type of educational system, because I can guarantee you the other students that you're sitting next to that are not black, they might not be hearing that in school either. But if they're getting it from somewhere. And if we're not giving it to them, then that's the reason why we're the ones that wake up one day and say, oh, we didn't learn this in school. Why did we not learn this in school? And it's like, well, you know, school is an edited, you know, system, and they can only teach you so much. And right now, considering how we're in a system of online virtual learning becoming more prominent, there's going to be way less time for them to turn around and teach life skills and courses about how to take care of finances. So if we don't include something like that in the culture, where you're teaching, you know, 5, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, like whether it's using an abacus back in the day when people were using abacus, but like nowadays all the toys people use is like to play around with. It's not to learn, you know.
I see like a lot of the games that they play and stuff like that on the internet, like math games and ELA games. A lot of that stuff is like really a waste of time. It doesn't, although it is helpful, it's great for somebody that's like ADHD, like I can't sit down, but the traditional learning style, there's no comparing that. You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff that kids get, like I think about my classroom years ago, like 9 years ago, 8 years ago, right? The type of stuff, I was the type of like moral teachings and social type of like learning that they got a chance to witness, going to the gallery, going to the Smithsonian to go see da-da-da-da-da. Like, I'm so tired of virtual tours. Like, I don't want to do another tour of any museum. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I've seen it all. And it's like, you know, for the kids, they've seen it all. It's like getting out and smelling the air and seeing them. I guess that's the issue, right? But like getting out and seeing things, you know, is missing. Them interacting with each other. That's what I'm happy. Like Among Us, you know what Among Us is? You ever heard of Among Us? It's like a video game that all the kids are playing now.
Oh, I have heard about that game. Yeah.
Is a way for them to socialize. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Roblox is another one that's real popular with the younger kids, and they just went public. They had an IPO earlier this year. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that when you were talking just now, it just like kind of jogged my memory is I think like the biggest hurdle for us is, and this applies to like the education model, but just like culturally is, you know, seeing is just one of our senses, right? So I can go on a virtual tour and see the museum, but if I go to that museum, I'm getting that sense of sight, but I'm also hearing what it sounds like to be in that place. I'm also, you know,
possible touch.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Like you're just
because when you're a young child, there's things for you to touch, buttons and all kind of stuff at those places. Yeah.
And like sometimes those buttons might turn on a certain like I don't know
it's
art
a full experience.
It's a full experience. It's not just I'm watching. And like a lot of our kids are probably gonna need glasses, like, you know, in the next few years because of the strain on their eyes. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's a lot of strain on their eyes. Seeing all of these people, images coming out at you, stuff like that. I think about like for kindergarten, like, man, I teach pre-K. I teach 4-year-olds.
See, here's the thing, man. Here's the beauty of it. I think about the concept of where we're going in the future. And if school become a little bit less prominent, what's going to happen is art is going to become more prominent because academics and our art is usually something that balances itself out, right? So when you have a student that's not doing well in school as far as learning like math and science, the more hard, concrete, square things, they're going to resort to the more rounded courses that allow them to learn and excel without having to be right. Like, you know, when you go to art, history, English, a lot of times those are the subjects that you can resort to when you're like, I don't want to go to the places where everybody who acts like they're always right can be. And so one of the things that I think is we may be at the precipice, like at the beginning of a transition where the mind of the people that we're around is going to start becoming more like building art or creating content as opposed to trying to fit in to a mold that come from learning like the more concrete things that the schools might be giving. So I guess what I'm really saying is, are we getting closer to a point where we're about to enter a new renaissance where, you know, people are really just more focused on experiencing life? Because now you don't have going to jobs. You can go out and experience their neighborhood. People who had to spend their Tuesday afternoon inside of a building now can spend their Tuesday afternoon in the park or at the beach or somewhere enjoying themselves because they're not at work. So I think that that's going to allow for a little bit more flow of mind and flow of heart and flow of creation. And that's something that I'm seeing in my own self as I'm thinking about creating like this podcast. I'm like, now everybody got all this time off. You better create something.
That's right. That's right. More entrepreneurship is happening. More independent businesses are happening. I know I done came up with like 2 businesses over this pandemic, you know. But I think also it's going to be like once this is over, like family is also going to be a focus. Like family that's not in your like immediate home, maybe your mother, grandmother, whoever, because, you know, a lot of folks have not been able to go to Thanksgivings and, you know, won't be able to go to Christmases or these other things. And like, you know, we as African Americans, that's part of like our DNA is like connecting. Right. It's a big thing, like connecting with your family, right? Like your whole family. And so a lot of us have been like not able to do that and trying to, you know, save our mothers and, you know, our fathers because they're the ones that are most vulnerable. Where I was looking for vulnerable. Yeah. And so, you know, I think that's going to be a time for that too. I also agree with you as far as the art A lot of my students, although some of them aren't coming to class, they're still doing art, right? Like they'll do art and hit me up like, Mr. Jones, what you think about this? What do you like this? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, you ain't been in class in like 3 weeks. Like what the fuck? But you still doing stuff that, because it's so much time on their hands. Like after class, like they don't really have anything to do. They can't go outside and be with friends and be, have to be inside saying.
I do think there's a caveat to that the idea that we're seeing a new renaissance in that because we're in a pandemic now, it's more beneficial to people who are creators.
Right.
The one caveat I would say is it's only beneficial to a certain type of artist. So I was just on one of my group chats yesterday talking with some friends of mine, and we were, talking about how there's no live concerts. Like I was basically saying, like, that's one of my favorite things that I've done that, as an adult, like I would do for leisure. I go to at least 3 or 4 concerts a year, with friends or just by myself sometimes. And that's one of the things that I probably miss the most about this pandemic. What I found is that certain artists, or even like, I'm a fan of battle rap, right? So like at a lot of these battle rap events now, they just had Smack Volume 6 on tonight. I was watching a little bit of that. But they've had to scale down the number of people because of COVID restrictions, right?
Right.
So now a lot of battle rappers that were successful in the past, when they were in these large venues with hundreds of people, and they thrive off of the energy that they get from the crowd. They're really good at manipulating the crowd reaction and using that to enhance their performance, are now struggling in this current climate where it's just a few people in the room or nobody in the room. It's just you and the person you're rapping against.
And your bar.
I'll cite my dude Kid Cudi. He's my Ohio veteran. Kid Cudi dropped that album yesterday, and I was like, man, it's like Cudi still got it. Like I was pleasantly surprised. Like I was jamming that album all day yesterday, and then I thought about it, and I was like, well, Cudi, when he first came out over 10 years ago, he was like the first black emo rapper. You know what I mean? Like before, it became, before a lot of people that came after him, the only rapper that I could really think of that was as popular as him was Eminem. Eminem kind of made like emo and introverted style more popular in mainstream rap. And Cudi, influenced Kanye and also kind of was very influential in his own right. Before Drake, there was Cudi. And he's rapping about depression and, struggling with addiction and things like that. So when I thought about it, I was like, well, it makes sense that Cudi would drop an album like this in the middle of the pandemic because his music was always pandemic music. Like, his stuff that he was doing 12 years ago could have came out. And it would have been perfect because everybody's inside the house right now. You know what I mean? Like, there's no big concerts and festivals right now. You know what I mean? So his style is catered to everybody just being in the house and listening to music on your earphones or whatever. Right. But yeah, so I do think that certain types of art are better consumed, and I think it's important to remember we live in a consumer society, right? So certain artists are going to thrive, and other artists are going to struggle.
Wait, all artists struggle. All artists struggle. It's our creativity that might be thriving, right? So even the musician, you might have time now to be in your studio and create some new work, right? But you can't have concerts and like just like artists, we can't have art shows and like even the tattoo game. Like, I'm a tattoo artist too. You know what I'm saying? So like tattooing is now different. Like tattooing with a mask, I've never had to tattoo with no mask. You know what I'm saying? So now I got to tattoo with a mask on, or decide not to tattoo at all because I'm coughing too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like we have to like all artists are hurting as far as the business side, but when it comes to the creative side, we've had time to create more and make more. Maybe on the internet business has been booming because you're able to put your stuff out there for folks to listen. And that's what everybody is. But like when it comes to like the people, which artists love to be around the people, not just like on a screen. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
song's kind of meant to me, and I wasn't around or alive for that moment, but it felt like it marked in an abundance of art to consume compared to the number of people or time that they had to consume it. Like people would consume, they could just consume, like they could read books. Like if you were interested in poetry or you like plays, you could just watch plays until you just couldn't watch. You just couldn't, if you didn't want to stop watching plays, like some of our aunties or some of our great grandparents or something like that, if they had something that they really liked, there was a time during the Renaissance where, like, if you like books, you could just read books all day and escape to reading books. And that was because somebody had enough time to write enough books that make you really want to write the books. And so, like, with the way that our current life is, like, I don't know if we would have been able to have a natural situation like that if it weren't for everybody slowing down. Even the celebs have had to slow down. And now you see them doing verses and see them doing stuff that you never would see them doing before. And that's because, like, they have time to think about creative things to do. And I mean, in my mind, I think that having the abundance of creativity, of creative pursuit, time for people to think about things is going to increase the quality of life that we all enjoy. Because we could always be caught up in the hustle and bustle of the American way, the corporate machine, or whatever industry we're a part of. But unless we slow all that down, we're never going to realize why we do all this in the first place. And I think that people starting to enjoy that, and enjoy that is going to start making art become, like, when you enjoy life, art becomes a more prominent thing. You ever look in, you sit in your apartment, you've been going to work every day, and you didn't even notice until you was at home every day now. You don't got no paintings on the wall. You got no art, nothing, no color in your house at all. And now you're like, man, I'm tripping. So some people are going to start looking at consuming art, buying it online. So it's like, I'm sitting in my house all the time and I got to do work. And I'm sitting in this crazy corner with nothing to inspire me. Can I have something at home to inspire me? Versus people probably didn't even think about the value of art for years in our generation.
Right. That's a great point. That's good. You know, the biggest indicator to me that the shift in how we consume art is, you know, we all grew up in the cassette/CD age now, right? And now we're in an era of streaming. You know, we were all in college when high-speed internet became a thing, and downloading. You know, Napster hit my freshman year of college. You know, and you know, you had these major groups suing, you know, because their music was getting illegally downloaded and pirated, right? So just earlier this week, they announced that Lil Wayne sold his licensing for his entire catalog for $100 million. I know I'm not going to say for a fact, but I'm pretty sure Lil Wayne net worth was at least $100 million, right? Before that deal. And they said there was some legal stuff that he's going through facing that may have forced him to do that before he really wanted to do it. But the first time I heard of somebody licensing out their catalog was when I found out that Michael Jackson owned the Beatles' entire catalog. I didn't even know that was possible. You know, Michael Jackson was savvy enough back in the 80s or 90s to purchase the licensing rights to the Beatles' entire catalog, right? But those type of deals were not common back then. Now, just in the past couple months, Lil Wayne is just the latest of several, many prominent, you know, recording artists, producers. The RZA sold his entire catalog to a company, and it's like one or two companies they're buying up. And the idea is that they own all the licensing rights, so when it comes to streaming and YouTube, they make money off of all of that, and they have 100% of their publishing, and they're selling their publishing and licensing rights for a lump sum. But what that tells me is that the artists, especially in the music industry, you know, they were making money hand over foot for years.
Right,
you know, when you had to have a physical copy, your overhead, your profit margin is a lot higher than when somebody's just paying $10 a month to stream your music unlimited as much as they want. So I think that now, you know, artists are trying to find it. Quincy Jones was another one that he sold his entire catalog.
No, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Quincy Jones. Like, these are big names. Some of these people that are doing these deals are people that are not Lil Wayne, that have no reason to be in a position where they even do that. And it makes you think about it, like, why would they do that? Like,
they're pressed for cash, and the pandemic is having an opposite effect on them, meaning they're not able to get the type of like income coming in. I'm sorry,
they're not, though. They're not pressed for cash. It's just the way it's a paradigm shift within the recording industry. And, you know, like Kanye and several other people have talked about how these deals in the record industry have been uneven for a long time. Just the way they do contracts. You know, Dave Chappelle, his stand-up, he talked about how his stuff is being licensed out by Comedy Central. He doesn't own it, you know. But, you know, now these people are finding new ways to create other income streams partially because of the pandemic and because of streaming and the shift in the industry. So I think that's a big indicator in terms of where things are going in terms of ownership for creators, whether it be a recording artist or a visual artist, whatever your form is.
It's like Russ, who decided to not submit to any labels, and he went completely independent, and he went platinum on his first album, and he made all the money off of it. And he's able to make all the money off of his shows, all of that kind of stuff like that. And so, like, he's motivated to make his art, whatever art he puts out gets consumed by the consumer, benefits from it directly.
And he's not the first. Chance was a similar before him, but yes.
Definitely not the first one. But the thing is, when you're an artist, you want to be able to have people consume your art, but you want to have people consume your art and you be able to benefit from it. If somebody sees the value in your art, you don't want to be the last person to benefit from that value.
Right. You want to get yours on the front end.
So yeah, that's why when I think about the Renaissance, what it also does, abundance of creativity and abundance of output, it allows you to maintain ownership of it because you're constantly putting it out. If somebody thought that they owned you, you constantly putting it out. Like Dave Chappelle, but nobody really owned Dave Chappelle because he's still out here putting out comedy, doing stand-up, making new material, and nobody owns his jokes. They may own Dave Chappelle's name, but they don't own Dave Chappelle's jokes. They don't own
his brand. Yeah, he's still his own brand.
And
but the content he did with that show, he doesn't own it. And even to the point where he can't even create a new show called Chappelle's Show. He would literally have to name it something different because they own the rights to the name. So what
Prince went through the same thing. Prince went through the same thing.
Yeah,
where like he had I can't remember who it was, but like
the artist. He sued Warner Brothers. He was signed to Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers. That's why he wrote like Slave on his face.
He came back as the artist formerly known as because he was in a war with Warner Brothers over the rights to release new music. And that's something that Dave Chappelle highlighted in that stand-up, especially he just released where he was, talking about it. But that also, it's like the exact opposite. So now, there a lot of these artists and creators, whether producers, rap, musicians, whatever, they're getting the money up front because for years, the way at least the way the recording industry was structured was, you get in advance, right? So like for struggling artists, you're just trying to increase your exposure. So the label had the ability to market your music to all the radio stations across the country and like expand your reach. But in return, what you're getting or what you're giving them is, part of your publishing, where you don't even own the rights 100% to all your music. So then that label can sell your publishing to somebody else to use it in a commercial or for whatever they want to use it for. And you get $100,000 up front, but then your tour costs and your wardrobe and all of that stuff, your marketing budget comes out of that advance. And they don't explain, a lot of people that are not in the position to be able to say, like, I'm going to turn down 100 G's because this deal isn't equitable. Like, I'm not getting ownership. I'm not getting, full license over to use my art how I want to use it.
We fought a lot through that from the 90s here. You still see some of that, but the 90s where the heyday of people really selling their art to labels outright. Like they were just trying to get signed by labels. They were waiting on a label to see the value, and labels had the complete leverage because if they saw the value in you, they could sign you. And whether or not other people saw the value in you, it didn't matter. Like back then, you could drop a tape and be dope, but if a label wasn't behind it, people probably still wouldn't value that music because who was signed to it. Now you got independent artists and that lane is wide open. So we transition to a time where it's almost your choice if you choose to go to a label. And when I speak of artists and I speak of art, I'm not just talking about the music industry, even though I know a lot of our, our artists do become, musicians. I still think of visual art as a very prominent thing. I still think as writing and poetry and spoken word and all of those things as viable pieces of aspects of art. And as those aspects grow, because honestly, some of the downturn of the music industry might help some of these artists go into other forms of art that are better suited for them because they may be a better poet. I even say Tupac was a better poet than anything. I think
I agree with that.
As we start getting into better forms of, art and actually being able to express ourselves from the natural way we want to express ourselves, that's the actual place we want to be, not the place where we are like, who's going to consume our art, but it's more like, what do I want to create? And when we get to that point, that's when we're actually at a place where I think we're really able to change the culture. Because if we're always trying to make art for the consumption mindset, we're always fulfilling the need that's there. But when the mindset of people actually go out and create, that's when they go and create what's going to be in the future. You know what I'm saying? And so I am
more meaningful art.
Exactly.
Art is more meaningful versus like this is just to be consumed.
Consumption.
That can be like visual art, musical art. You know what I'm saying? You got some folks that like they'll put out an album because the release date is coming up. You know what I'm saying? And they just got to put it out. Versus like, okay.
That happened with Chance just now. Like his manager sued, filed a lawsuit for $3 million because his last album that came out last year or earlier this year didn't perform up to expectation. And his former manager is suing him for $3 million because of potential earnings that were lost because, he was trying to he got married and right around the same time that he was releasing the album, and his manager was like, yeah, like you're taking on too much, but he had a wedding planned and he did all this, and they said the album was rushed and it didn't really get executed the way they wanted to. It was supposed to be his debut album. There was a lot of anticipation behind it, but it didn't perform that well sales wise and just critically compared to his previous work. Right. And the other thing that I think of with just this whole topic is going forward, like what that means for the way people conduct business. Because again, it's a consumer society, and like a lot of these artists are exploited by these companies that have a lot of resources and connections, and they literally can make stars from scratch. Almost like you created in a lab. But, that's for the purpose of being consumed to maximize profit. You have those, and there's always been that dichotomy between, people that just do it for the love, for the art of creating something groundbreaking, something timeless, something classic, and people that are doing it for mass consumption. Right. And I think it's important to sell it. It's important to distinguish that because, especially now, without these artists being able to tour and throw these huge stadium concerts where you can pack 50,000, however many thousand people into one place, and they pay $50 per person, like the millions and millions of dollars that are generated. That's what's really hurting these artists is the fact that they're not able to tour.
But that's what I was saying. It's like, that's what's hurting these artists, in my opinion. Like the tours are gone. Yeah. They can't sell out these concerts. And like they got bills, like artists. These artists have serious bills. Yes, like now they're kind of strapped to just do like whatever, like sell off your catalog. That sounds crazy. For $100 million for Lil Wayne to sell it for $100 million.
It sounds low, right?
It sounds very
like
low.
you get way more than that. That's what I said. Like, whoa, 100 million.
But even to know that folks like Quincy Jones, whose work is timeless,
Yeah.
like, you know, to hear that he's selling off, you know, his rights or whatever, that sounds
ownership.
It makes me feel like I'm losing something. I don't even know the man. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what's funny about that is like is nobody talks because like I mean I pay attention to stuff like that, but at the same time like Taylor Swift, you know, they talk about. I just heard them talk about it on the Joe Budden podcast, but Scooter Braun, who you know is mostly known for discovering Justin Bieber, and you know he's a big time promoter and you know industry mover and shaker. He purchased the rights to her like first 5 or 6 albums for a large sum of money. And she had no control over that happening. Like her label that she was on, they sold the rights to her music to him. He sold it to somebody else. And now, you know, even though she's one of the biggest names in the music industry, she can either make new music and still sell millions and own and have 100% ownership of that, or she can re-record her old material and re-release it and have ownership of that. But you know, it's not just like you said, like Quincy Jones. That's a name that's surprising. The difference is Wayne, you know, sold his for 100 million. People like Quincy and I think L.A. Reid did a similar deal, or the RZA. You know, they're getting more like 200, 300 million for their catalogs. You know, if you have a 20-year career, if you have a career as long as Lil Wayne's, you know, like that just kind of speaks to, you know, like Wayne is a generational artist. There's very few people that have had his influence and his longevity in music in our lifetime, especially in hip hop. But you know, if you look at him versus a Jay-Z, that just shows you, you know, the difference between doing good business and doing smart business, and doing business where you maybe are exploited because you trusted somebody too much that, you know, discovered you at an early age, or, you know, you were just too loyal.
Comes back to when we speak about the Renaissance. I think that what we're seeing is a time for us to start realizing how to make art be the focus. You know, I think that, you know, the consumption and the industry of the art, whether we're talking about music or whether we're talking about other forms of art that are consumed, we have to start thinking about, you know, how we're actually going to be creating it, because all things are forms of art. Even, you know, what we're creating right here is a form of art. And, you know, I appreciate you guys coming together to do it. And what it does is it allows us to create something that our kids can look at and people can look at in the future and get an idea of a story that we're telling and learn how to tell their story. That's the value in art. And as we start to learn how to make more of it and more people, not just famous celebs, but when the everyday person is creating that, telling their stories, we're going to actually start being able to change the culture, because people who tell their stories are usually able to change the world, because they change the world through those stories they tell. You know, so, you know, I encourage everyone out there to learn how to tell your story as we tell ours. The story for MXM Radio, the Martin Times Malcolm podcast, the story we like to tell is Recapture the Revolutionary. And I appreciate you guys coming out tonight to talk about some good topics. And as we expound upon them, I think that one of the themes that comes through is you definitely want to have a good sense of education for the students out here. People who are out here in the world who are learning virtually need to have some support. So do the teachers. We also need to think about having a better sense of educating our students at home in different ways that involve like things that are not just academic, but teaching them about art, teaching them about life skills, and helping them get those things that they're not getting as the pandemic still rages on. So yeah, man, I want to give a chance to let you, Shaka, and AD give a chance to say your pieces before we head out, man.
Well, hey, man. Peace, love, light. This is Shaka, your resident hotep. How's your boy?
Yeah. Mic drop. Damn, you took my intro. Peace, everybody. My name is Adam, effectively known as AD. And if Shaka's the resident Hotep, I guess I'm the resident mainstream. I ain't really that mainstream, but I'm a mixed bag.
Both in us, right? That's what.
I'm a mixed bag. Sometimes I'm a Hotep too.
And sometimes
respectfully,
in the boardroom,
But always good to chop it up with you brothers, man. And I'm just happy to share my perspective and also learn and gain insight through hearing other perspectives. So let's keep it going, man.
Yes, sir, man. Well, y'all out there, man, you know how to find us. It's Martin times Malcolm, wherever you need to find us. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Clubhouse, all the apps, the podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, everywhere. Don't make an excuse for not being able to find us. We got a website, martintimesmalcolm.com. See you. Peace.
By any means necessary.